Okay, I don't know if you feel that or not, but just now we just did a very quick review of the major concepts presented in data structure. So, well, it's a lot of things, and if you remember them and you're good to go. And if you feel you need to do some reviews of data structures, please do so ASAP because those are the contents I expect you to remember in this class. Okay, so next let's move on to the second part of homework one. So here is a new programming problem. So the goal is we want to build all the possible palindromes using a given set of the characters. And I'm also going to give you a target length. So, well, what is a palindrome? And for example, if we have a word kayak, for example, so kayak. Okay, so what's the cool thing about the word kayak? So if you read it from the left to right side or from the right side to the left side, and they are K-A-Y-A-K, right? So well, this is called a palindrome. A palindrome is a string that you read from left to right or right to left, and they are the same. Okay, so the goal is, well, if I give you a list of the letters. So for example, if I say, okay, you can only build palindromes with the letters C, I, and V. Okay, C, I, and V. They're the only three letters you can use. And then use those three letters to build all the possible palindromes and that have the length as 5. So 5 letters palindromes using only C, I, V, and then print all of them. Okay, and how do you do that? Well, first let's see what are the results. So C, 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 C. Yep, that is a palindrome because you read from one side or the other side, they're the same. Or I, C, 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 I. Okay, I, C, 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 I, reading from one side to the other side, and you will find in either way it is the same. Okay, so the next part, let's talk about how we can build a palindrome. So let's consider that at the very beginning, we start from an empty string. And then, well, to make the problem easier, instead of using the n as 5, I'm going to use the n as a 3. And then the letters we are allowed to use are C, I, and V. Okay, so the first step, from the empty string, well, we can do C as one letter, I as one letter, or V as one letter. And when we did that, and you will find for the one letter C, or one letter I, or one letter V, they are palindromes. Well, you read one side or the other side, and they're the same, right? And once we have those seed palindromes, now, well, now we simply need to expand the palindromes, and here's how. Well, when we have a C as a palindrome, and so C is a palindrome, and then if we add the same letter to both sides, and then we will have another palindrome. So what do I mean? Well, let's say we start from C, right? And then we start from the C, and then using C in the middle. If we add C and C at the beginning and the end, and then we expand a palindrome length 1 into a palindrome using the length as a 3 because we add 2 C's at the beginning at the end. Okay, and how about this C, but if we add 2 I's? So C is in the middle, it is a palindrome. And using a palindrome, if we add the same letter to the very beginning at the very end, we expand a palindrome and then we build another palindrome, and yet we increase the length by 2, right? So this is how we can get the CCC, ICI, and then VCV. Okay, the same thing. So we have the C here, so we get the C from here, and then we are adding the V at the very beginning at the end. So using the seed, C, I, and V, we can keep on expanding them to get the palindromes with the length as 3, and we can have the palindromes with the length as 5. Okay, so the next question is, how about the target is a 4? So if we have a target as 4, now we have the problem. Because we have the seed palindromes are all have one lattice, and this means 1 expand on both sides, we have 3, and then expand on both sides again, we have 5. So we will never get the target as 4. So the question is, how do we have the target as 4? So now what we have to change is, well, on the seed palindrome, we have to start from CC, II, and VV. So for each of the letter, we repeat that once. So we have CC, so 2 letters, and then it is palindrome. And then II, it is palindrome. And then VV, it is another palindrome. So what we have to change is, we have to check what is the target length. Is that an even number or an odd number? And depending on the target is even or odd, we have to tailor the seed palindromes. And once we have a group of the seed palindrome, and then we don't need to worry, and then we just use the same trick. So we grab a palindrome, we add 1 letter at the beginning and the same letter at the end, and then we expand the palindrome by 2 more letters, and it's guaranteed that we will still have a palindrome. Okay, so here is the requirement. You need to create a function build all palindromes, and it takes 4 parameters, and it has to be a recursive function. So you will have the current string, the target length, and then the current length you have, and then the letters that are the letters that you can really choose from. So for example, here we only have the C, I, and V, right? So if we want to build all the palindromes using C, I, and V, so the target will be 5, and we start from a empty string, so there's nothing there, and then, well, the current length will be a 0. So this is current string, empty, and then we have 5, that's the target, and then we have 0 because currently there's no letter in our palindrome, and then we can only choose letters from C, I, and V. So, and if you finish this function and you call that, and you are supposed to see something like this. So CCC, I, CCCC, or I, CCCI, or V, CCCV, etc. Okay, so why do I create this exercise using the C, I, and V? Well, the reason is I'm driving a Civic every day, and Civic itself is a palindrome. So when you are building the palindromes using C, I, and V, Civic should be one of them. Okay, and how do you code that? Well, you need to, when you code this, and then when current string is at the target length. So this means if your target is a 5, and then your current length is already a 5, and this means, okay, you cannot green this palindrome even further because you are on the target length, and then you can simply print the current palindrome sequence. And otherwise, and if it can be expanded, and then you just grab a letter from letters and add that to the beginning at the end of the current palindrome, and then you can do a recursive call to expand that further. Okay, so remember this has to be a recursive function that builds palindromes. Okay, so this is the second part of the assignment 1, and if you need a review of the structure, and go ahead, and if you want to talk to me and see what are the possible material that can help you do this review of the data structure ASAP, and shoot me an email. And next lecture we are going to start our real content for our class, and that is the big O notation. Okay, I will see you in the next lecture. Bye bye.